Hi everybody. We wanted to give you some information about the role of the classroom teacher with MAP testing. Like we've done with PARC and like we're planning on doing with Access this year when Access moves to an online test, and with PARC this year again, we're trying to minimize the work and the knowledge that classroom teachers need to have about the actual delivery of the test so that you can continue to focus on student learning and student assessment. There are a few things that are really important that teachers understand, and so in this video we want to go through those so that you have peace of mind. To run the test, all you really need are the classroom directions that should have been shared district-wide by each information literacy coach, as well as some information specific to each session that we'll talk about in a few minutes that you'll get from, again, your information literacy coach, your principal. It could be in an elementary school, the learning coach, or in a middle school, the literacy and media teacher. Either way, the number one role of the classroom teacher is essentially reading the directions, actively monitoring the students while they're participating in the assessment, and then either interrupting their test if they haven't finished by suspending it, we'll show you how to do that, or reaching out via Google Hangouts to your MAP school manager team if you have another problem. Each morning, prior to the start of the school day, your school's information literacy coach or one of the other members of the MAP school manager team will start each session. At that point, they will also send each teacher important information about that session, a name, a password, and a PIN. So at the start of each session, in the middle schools, the students will need to open their Chromebooks and log out. They will need to sign out as themselves. Because like with PARC, MAP uses what's called kiosk mode, where they'll launch the app before they've even signed into the computer, and then the app will take over the entire screen. In the elementary schools, of course, we'll need to distribute the Chromebooks to the students. It doesn't matter in this case what Chromebook each student gets. While normally we try and keep the same Chromebook with each student, that's unimportant here because they're not going to be signing in to their accounts. The teacher needs two things available on his or her computer at that point. They need the directions that we've shared out, as well as the information shared by one of their MAP school managers earlier that day. And there's three pieces of information they'll receive. They'll receive the name of the session, which I've already written on the board here, but in this case it's GA3M. The GA stands for Gill Administration Center. In your cases, for the middle schools, it will either be CMS, HMS, or LMS, and for the elementary schools, it will be the initials of the author. So EF for Eugene Field, or JWR for James Whitcomb Riley. The grade level, and then an M for math and an R for reading. And then there will be a password that will be sent, and I'm going to put that password on the board. Then there will be a third piece of information. Please do not write this on the board. This is just for you. And that third piece of information is your proctor PIN. We'll show you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. At that point, you can simply dive into the directions that we've provided for you and read them aloud to the students. We've tried to cover every little detail in all of the testing that we've done at each school to prepare for this. And so you should be able to stick to those directions without too much of a problem. We're not going to actually read the directions to you now, but we will show you how student login works next. So at this point, all of the students would have their Chromebooks, and Ursula is now playing the role of a student rather than an information literacy coach. And they would open their Chromebooks, and in the directions it would tell you exactly what to have them do. Now, unfortunately, Ursula's screen is going to flicker here like that because we don't have a special filter for the camera to prevent this. But what the students will do is they'll click the Apps button in the lower left corner, and there will be a link that says MAP Chromebook Testing, and they'll click on that. It's that little white box that you can barely see there. And once they click on that, that app will open up, the MAP Chromebook Testing app. Again, we realize it's difficult to see, but we just wanted to give you an idea. Then they'll write in the test session name from the board, as well as the password from the board. And all of the students would do that. Once they've done that, they'll have to select their name from the list of students after they've clicked the blue Join button. Now, this list of students will be all of the students within the grade level, with the exception of students who are in another session for a few different reasons. So Ursula's going to go and find her name on the list and select it and click Next. The correct test should already be selected for them, and they'll wait on this screen as teachers come around and make sure that this is correct. And this is all in the directions. Once the teacher has verified that each student has the correct name up, so Ursula's playing Catherine Gill right now, she would click Yes. And at this point, the teacher, there will be a pause in the action for a moment here, because the teacher will reach out via Google Hangouts to one of the MAP school managers, probably the information literacy coach, and ask them to launch the next step that they need to do on their end. And then as soon as they've done that, the students will be able to start testing, and you'll see that change on their screens. So there is an interruption in your classroom process where you do need to reach back out to your MAP school manager, and your MAP school manager in another part of the building will go ahead and enable all of the students to begin testing, and then you can proceed from there. At this point, the information literacy coach has confirmed all of the students in the classroom and has sent a Hangout message back to me, the teacher, saying that the students should now have a blue Start Test button on their screen. Lo and behold, Ursula, playing the student named Catherine Gill, does, and she can go ahead, and when the teacher finishes those directions, click Start Test and begin testing. So at this point, students are testing. And as the teacher, I'm just actively monitoring. I'm walking around the room. I'm making sure they're making their way through it. Again, if there's any technical problems, I can use Hangouts on my staff laptop to contact our MAP school managers, the information literacy coach, the principal, an elementary school learning coach, or a middle school literacy and media teacher will try and respond as quickly as they can. Remember, MAP is not actually a timed test. So if help coming your way takes a little longer than need be, that's no problem. Students will be able to finish the test either during that time or at another time. Now, there are some times that you might need to use the proctor command from NWEA. And that command is Control-Shift-P. An example of when I would need to use that is, let's say the office calls and I have a student in my classroom, like Catherine here, played by Ursula, who has to go to the orthodontist. Or let's pretend, maybe we won't have to pretend, that the Cubs are in the World Series and one of my students is leaving to go to the game. Again, in either of those cases, the student would be able to finish the test later on. This is different than other standardized tests we've taken over the years and that we continue to take now. So as the proctor, that third piece of information that was provided to me, I need that now. And again, I don't want to write that on the board. That is a secret between the information literacy coach and me as the teacher. So I'm going to go ahead and say, go ahead and finish this problem, Catherine, and then when you're done with this problem, we're going to stop your test because you need to go off to the orthodontist. So Ursula's going to finish that problem, and then I'm going to use the Control-Shift-P command here on her computer. And when I do that, it's going to pop up a box, and it's going to ask me for my proctor pin, which I'm going to enter. It's a 4-digit number that I've gotten, and that's why it's easy to get confused between the password and the proctor pin. And then I can report a problem. There's a problem with the test. And then there's 3 options at the bottom. Resume test. Well, I don't want to resume the test. She's going to the orthodontist. Suspend the test or terminate the test. And again, we would ask you not to terminate the test. We can always do that later on. So you're going to go ahead and suspend the test. And then it says your test is stopped. You can continue at a later date. If you need help, raise your hand. Well, there's no reason for her to raise her hand. I'm standing right here. And then we can just click OK. And at this point, it takes her back to the login screen, and we can power down the Chromebook and then shut it, and she can go get her stuff and head off to the orthodontist. So again, the command is Control-Shift-P, and what we want you to do there is use the Suspend Test option. So we want to thank everybody for their flexibility as we implement MAP in a new way this year. By being able to do MAP on the Chromebooks, we're going to be able to get MAP done much more quickly and have much less disruption to our instructional time, and we're really excited about that. Now, one thing to understand is, while The test has changed a little bit in that it's now web-based and we're not using a server anymore in our schools and we're using Chromebooks. It's actually still the same test. It's the same pool of questions. It's the same idea that if a student gets this one right, they're going to get an adjustable response, the next question is going to adjust based on their response, and the test will get harder, and if they get it wrong, the test will get easier. And the whole idea is to zero in on their RIT score at the end of the test. A couple other things to keep in mind. Like I just mentioned, we're not running this on our servers any longer. It's actually hosted by NWEA. So if they have problems on their end, unfortunately we have problems. And many area school districts around us did suffer from that earlier this school year. Hopefully our timing will prevent that from happening to us. Additionally, because it's web-based and all happening on their servers, if they make changes one day, we may see something different the very next day. Here's an example of that. Just 2 days ago, the week before we started testing, Ursula and I stood in front of the information literacy coaches and we reminded them that we will not see the scores at the end of the assessment. Well, that changed yesterday, and now the scores will pop up at the end of the assessment just like they always have. Again, not super important, but it's a great example of how the test can change when MAP makes a change on their end. Finally, and this is really important for all of us to think about, in a way we're starting over with MAP. This is a baseline year. We've shifted from spring testing to fall testing. Only our second graders and new students last year took MAP at all. So this is a new start for us with our every fall testing. And so this is a baseline year. And this year will really help us understand, starting about a year from now, how much growth our students have shown based on this measure. Of course, we want to counterbalance that by having really great assessments that we're developing as teams in our classrooms that show us on a daily basis how our students are doing, and just use MAP as a measure to confirm that what we're seeing in our classroom and team assessments is mirrored by MAP, or if it isn't, that we have some understanding as to why that might be. So thanks again for your flexibility with the implementation of MAP this year. We really appreciate all of your help and support, and we're looking forward to starting this new data collection process for our students during the fall each year.